Hello everyone, I am Nawa Fatima.
And I am Mohammad Fehmeed from AJK MCRC Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi, India.
Today we are presenting on the topic I am not myself, exploring identity, satire, and social critique through digital avatars on Instagram.
In the contemporary digital landscape, the idea of identity can't be ascribed to any absolutist tendencies but is rather a fluid, often performative construct mediated by social media platforms, the primary weight of which can be seen on Instagram, Facebook, and Snapchat, among others. In addition to allowing users to curate a projection of themselves, these platforms also offer them a variety of tools like filters, emojis, and avatars that meticulously mold the construction, expression, and interpretation of the self.
Digital avatars serve as personalized symbols, an extension of identity, at times an optimistic projection of the self, and at others a strategic tool for satire and social critique. The tool becomes inherently liberating when used with intentional anonymity and becomes a scathing indictment of the status quo when the stylization of irony enables a broader social dialogue, all with the aid of the avatar.
In India and Pakistan, social critique, especially when targeting prominent power structures, often invites backlash, censorship, and moral policing. Digital avatars enable forms of performative dissent that both conceal and reveal. They obscure the creator's personal identity while foregrounding a stylized performance that critiques societal norms. As Sherry Turkle noted, the Internet invites individuals to experiment with identity in ways that are inherently fluid, reflexive, and protean. However, in the context of Indo-Pak, such experimentation also carries political weight. It becomes a means of resisting ideological conformity and voicing marginal or dissenting positions. This paper engages with the idea of how creators in India and Pakistan use avatar-based mockery to navigate the presentation of the self while performing the endangered act of hierarchical critique.
In this context, we aim to address the following pertinent questions. How do digital avatars on Instagram shape or reshape the presentation of self, enabling unified creators to perform fragmented or strategic identities within the socio-cultural frameworks of India and Pakistan? How do satirical digital avatars employ humor, vantage anonymity, and stylized performance to critique hegemonies of caste, class, and privilege, particularly in the Indian and Pakistani contexts? What role does audience engagement play in reinterpreting, amplifying, transforming, or curbing the meaning of such satirical performances? And how do these interactions contribute to the upending or upliftment of social hierarchies in digital spaces? Theoretically, this study is grounded in Erving Goffman's notion of the self as a performed identity, staged through front and backstage behaviors. It also draws on Belk's theory of the extended self in digital context, John Suler's online disinhibition effect, and Yee and Bailenson Proteus effect, which suggests that one's behavior conforms to the characteristics of the avatar being used. To understand the propagation and the overview of their act, the paper also considers the work of Schiffman on memes as cultural units of meaning and Fraser's critique of the public sphere as a space of contestation. Methodologically, the study employs critical discourse analysis to examine visual and verbal content, including posts, captions, and audience interactions from the select Instagram accounts to present the said argument. It would therefore consider the colloquial ideas either as embedded in their performance itself, the aesthetic and linguistic choices that frame their ideological positions, and the reception by followers who are rather active participants in this act and often extend the satire through comments and remixes.
It focuses on case studies of two creators, Swineryy and Anurag-Verma's character, Ronnie Malhotra. Their work resonates with what Bakhtin termed the carnivalesque, a temporary inversion of hierarchies that exposes the absurdities of power through humor. The Instagram account Swineryy exemplifies how anonymity, humor, and visual stylization converge in avatar-based satire. Launched by an anonymous Pakistani woman in 2018, the account gained attention for its humorous Animoji characters, animated floating heads that speak in colloquial English and Urdu, delivering sharp, irreverent, and incisive observations on what she is bothered by: the pretense of religion, allyship, patriarchy, and gender. Swinery's content critiques a range of issues from internalized patriarchy and religious performance to class, elitism, and domestic life. Initially filmed on borrowed iPhone, the videos underscores how digital technology democratizes satire. For Swinery, the anonymity provides an aesthetic choice as well as a strategic form of resistance. Her creative decisions to remain anonymous stem from her wanting humor to remain genderless. Digital avatars enable her to explore multiple identities across the human and non-human spectrum.
The central device in Swinery's work is the Animoji avatar, both human and non-human, typically a pig, an alien, or a blue-colored religious cleric, the blue Maulvi Sahab, that masks the creator's identity while delivering irreverent commentary. Each character embodies a lifetime's observation, appearing sharply drawn and critically concise, even at times of caricature. Lena Auntie, for instance, is an exaggerated portrayal of the moralizing older woman, wielding religious and class authority to scold others while revealing her hypocrisy. In Swinery's case, the anonymity provided by Animoji amplifies her capacity to critique the very structures that silence women in public discourse.
Why am haram? Why I am haram? I'm fucking cute just because I'm eating my shit a little bit sometimes doesn't mean anything.
This is the first video posted by Swineryy on her Instagram page. The pig character in particular embodies contradiction. As a symbol of religious impurity in Islam, it serves as an ironic spokesperson for truth-telling. Through this grotesque yet comical mask, the creator voices critiques that would be socially risky if delivered in her voice and body.
Anurag-Verma, an Indian author, cultural critic, and podcast host, engages in a different form of avatar-based satire through his Instagram account Anurag-Verma and its extension Ronnie AMV. The central figure of this satire is Ronnie Malhotra, a stylized pit-Mulji avatar designed to represent a pseudo-intellectual, tone-deaf, privileged, upper-caste Indian man. Through Ronnie, Verma delivers unique observations that parody internalized castes, performative liberalism, and the contradiction of a wokeness incompatibility with the character's own biases. Verma's own Dalit identity makes the satire particularly pointed by adopting an upper caste persona. He inverts the dominant caste discourse, critiquing privilege from an outsider's perspective but voicing it from inside, creating a singular Dalit critique in an increasingly elite pantheon.
Unlike Swinery, Verma does not operate anonymously. His face and name are publicly known, but Ronnie functions as a fictional character with its persona. Ronnie Malhotra's character is a caricature of Savarna liberalism, but as and when Ronnie speaks something tone deaf, the inversion of the expectation from a Dalit critic becomes glaringly relevant. Although Verma's irreverence is critical, it is also his profound understanding of the opposing ideology, one that generates a Ronnie, that reflects upon Verma's position as a Dalit critic. Ronnie is therefore not a mask for Verma to hide behind. He is a tool through which injustices are brought forward and its inconsistencies in the majoritarian narrative are foregrounded.
So, I still remember that day when I couldn't go to Justin Bieber concert in Mumbai because I was stuck in the traffic for 2 hours in the evening. So, this is the country which neutralizes your privilege. So, I'm in a way, I identify myself as a privileged, underprivileged, born in a third world country. That's how I identify myself. So the epistemological question is how far you can go in this country with the privilege.
In this widely shared reel, Ronnie proclaims, I identify myself as a privileged underprivileged, born in a third world country. The statement, while ludicrous, reflects a painfully real discourse in India's elite circles. The satire wasn't invented by Verma. He is simply observant enough to locate the absurdity present and reframe what is already said over and over as morally acceptable in socially responsible settings, making its contradictions unavoidable.
Digital avatars complexify the traditional models of performance of the self, offering contradictory, fractured, almost paradoxical spaces where the critique of the ideologue is parallel to the threat of exposing one's own true self. Irving Goffman's foundational metaphor of the self as a theatrical performance divided into front and backstage regions remain true, yet even as digital spaces continue to blur such boundaries, the idea of the mask being a front stage performance and the self no longer at the back but at center stage seem to hold weight now more than ever. The avatar is therefore an instrument to construct and deconstruct simultaneously. In the case of Swineryy and Anurag-Verma, the avatars are not only stylized representations, they are strategic social critique constructed through voice, humor, and character.
In Swinery's content, identity is performed through a plethora of stereotypes, each presented via an Animoji avatar accompanied by a unique voice, language, and expression. Her shifting avatars and the intra-dynamics of her self-representation reflect Judith Butler's theory of gender as performative, socially inscribed through repeated acts. The pig avatar, for example, returns the question to the audience, provoking its uncongenial image and societal disgust by exaggerating its association with impurity while juxtaposing it to patriarchy and classism, acting as a rather irreverent figurine of disapproval while making the majority laugh their way into their biases. By voicing these critiques through non-human avatars, she destabilizes established expectations of the growing quietude in the face of normativity. Similarly, Anurag-Verma's Ronnie Malhotra is a caricature of Savarna liberalism. In Goffman's terms, Verma exhibits role distance. He intentionally puts on the act of Ronnie, signaling to the viewers that it is a performance rather than a reflection of his genuine self, be it from a place of self-preservation or the creative height. This aligns with Turkle's insight that online environments allow people to construct and experiment with multiple selves. Fans of Ronnie often address him directly in comments, highlighting Bartle's idea that one does not merely pretend to be someone. Rather, it becomes one's identity in that moment. Here, we peculiarly apply Bell's theory of the extended self. Avatars in these contexts do not merely extend the presentation of the self, they essentially fragment it. The audience does not encounter a singular unified identity, but rather a series of stylized selves. As Belk notes, we are what we have. Self-extension occurs through control and mastery of an object. This multiplicity is central to both our humorists. Swineryy uses character rotation to critique hegemonic understandings from multiple vantage points, including human and non-human actors, fragmenting her singular, easily ascribable identities into multiple. In the case of Ronnie Malhotra, instead of extending Verma's personal identity, the avatar deliberately contrasts it. The avatar here serves as an inverse mirror. It is not a mask of aspiration, but a mirror of critique. In other words, Verma designs Ronnie to emphasize the difference between himself and the privileged figure he mocks. Ronnie's exaggerated accent, clothing, and topics signal to the audience exactly how to interpret him, not as Verma's true self, but as a satirical construct. In the digital sphere, satire increasingly operates through sarcasm, which is now purely the language of memes, reels, and avatars. Schiffman notes, the key to memes' cultural power lies in their ability to merge entertainment with critique, allowing users to express resistance in a language of irony and familiarity. This duality is crucial in the understanding of the art that Swineryy and Anurag-Verma perform, and in understanding how they embed conscious colloquial socio-political commentary within fragmented, aesthetically obtuse selves.
Swinery employ a grotesque humor to enact satire on her audience. The avatars are not simply absurd, they are purposefully unsettling in their appearance and their implication to the fragile societal makeup of her audience. The avatar unscrupulous behavior, exaggerated dailiness, and colloquial speech serve as both parody and deflection, providing critique of religious hypocrisy, male entitlement, and classism while also preserving anonymity. The satire here is not neutral, it is partisan, sharp, and emotionally livid. This style of satire complicates Turkle's optimistic framing of digital identity as playful. In these performances, the playfulness of the play is revisited. Play becomes labor, the labor of social critique, of framing irony, of having to balance humor with political intent. Satire here is not light-hearted, not a limerick or a joke. It is a ploy for survival, of resistance, and a lasting impression of dissent.
Anurag-Verma's satires may seem more discursive, but it isn't always so. Ronnie Malhotra's scripts parody the jargon used in a specific social justice discourse, characterized by underread, social media influenced left liberal perspectives, highlighting the gap between this adopted language and actual lived experiences and ethics as conveyed through fleeting images. The satire targets a specific niche of people: urban, English-speaking, caste-privileged Indians, often engaged in virtue signaling at any cost, creating a bubble that fails to challenge their own structural advantages due to their superficial progressiveness.
Followers of Swinery and Anurag-Verma participate in co-constructing the satire, extending its critique through comments, shares, memes, and remixes. This phenomena is direct borrow of Schiffman's claim that memes are not static text but living artifacts, constantly evolving through user interaction. The avatar is therefore a small locus on an infinite parabola that extends to influences unknown.
Audience responses to Swinery often take the form of sustained relatability. Users tag friends, echo catchphrases, and identify with or mock the stereotypes portrayed. Swinery's digital avatars have become shorthand for societal roles that are not only familiar to middle-class Indians and Pakistanis, but are a reflection of their daily lives. This became even more pronounced when Swinery's characters sprung from the digital domain to the offline public sphere, where several women held placards at the Aurat March held in Pakistan in 2019, saying, "I am Shazia's daughter," a maligned target of the judgmental slut-shaming Lena auntie, one of the many characters on Swinery's Instagram. Swinery's anonymity adds a further layer. Her refusal to reveal her identity protects her from backlash and amplifies the universality of her avatar. As Scott argues, anonymity can create rhetorical space where marginalized voices gain discursive agency. This is an agency she shares with her audience, creating a safe space through her parodical identity for other women.
Meanwhile, Anurag minus Verma's followers engage with Ronnie Malhotra as a character they love to hate. There is irony laced in every inch of the detachment and the oblivious privilege of Ronnie, an act that generates layered responses. Some comment as if speaking directly to Ronnie, an act of observing Ronnie as an independent digital identity, a whole birth in itself, while others remix his lines to critique similar figures in their life, an act of finding Ronnie within themselves. This participatory satire illustrates Jenkins' model of convergence culture, where audiences do not merely consume content but reshape it.
In Ronnie Malhotra's character, this tension is exemplified, often blurring the line between character and belief. Some audience members mistake irony for endorsement, a common risk in parodic performance, but nonetheless, it doesn't take away from his practice. Through the case studies of Swineryy and Anurag minus Verma's Ronnie Malhotra, we examine how anonymity, aestheticization, and satire enable creators to navigate politically translucent terrains, critiquing caste privilege, gender norms, and religious hypocrisy. Ultimately, avatar-based satire is not merely a source of entertainment. It is an active and booming space that focuses on real issues and engages with the debate in a manner that direct polity might be unable to. The acts of Swineryy and Verma aren't digital costume contests. They are a reclamation of spaces they deem to be at the threat of erasure. They are an active performance of dissent, shaped by their anxieties, replenished by their audiences in an emboldened act of participation. In doing so, they remind us that presenting a digital self isn't just an act of expression, but an act of visibility, critical thinking, and a hopeful transformation. Thank you.